Hello and welcome back. We are here for part 2 with Miko and
RealityQuest.
RealityQuest.
Get uncomfortable with RealityQuest. We're still working on the tagline.
Yeah, I think
you can submit your idea at www.realityquestpodcast.com.
we are taking submissions for the next 48 hours, so hurry up and race on in there and give us what you got.
Spelunk into the awkward minds of Jay and Kelly.
The bizarre brains and conversation spaces in immersive reality. Oh, the metaverse.
Wow, I love it. More. Okay, so
Anyways.
This is part 2.
Yep.
Not much to be said. Honestly, just go back and listen to part 1.
If you somehow managed to stumble into the beginning of this episode by accident and you don't know what we're talking about,
please
just click the back button once on your podcast player.
Yeah, we're not going to redo all those lengthy intros we did. Just go to part 1 and enjoy part 2. Going off of the theme of kind of bringing stuff to the masses and like creating this whole industry from scratch, what are the types of experiences that you guys really like and want to see? Like some of your kind of dream ideas of what can be done with VR and what can be done with this kind of empathy that we're talking about balancing.
Like things you would want to see more experimentation and exploring.
Right. Oh, and forward. If you can work it in, Mike, I had a pin that I never got to get back to, and I wanted to hear so much about it, which was how you like books, like the empathy in books. You think that's stronger than anything. So see if you can like fold that into the waffle of your
stack of waffles.
Yeah.
I have a very good way to do that, actually.
Oh, yes. Oh, okay. I'm so happy. Okay.
I think probably that so one of the things that is a big part of multiple VR experiences out there, there are quite a few like social VR spaces, like Alt Space and like VR Chat and this is actually part of Horizon, the project that I'm working on. There's user generated content is a huge aspect of a lot of the kind of idealized goals. I think in general there have been a lot of people who have just always that's the holy grail, the thing that you're really searking for.
Rec Room would be another good example.
Rec Room's another good example of it.
Can you just like real quick expand on what user generated content means?
Right. So basically giving people who are playing the game the ability to build in the game, or game is again not an appropriate word.
Like making it a tool, right?
Yes.
Like they can build new experiences for people.
Tools within the experience that let you make something directly within the world. And I think the reason that books always have felt to me like in some ways they're more of an immersive experience or more of a emotion driving experience is because the world that you're building in your imagination is your own, and there's some degree of maybe not ownership per se, but there's a certain you're getting to express in that, and in a lot of ways it becomes exactly what you want it to be. And so that idea of giving people the ability to build something and create something that is very directly a product of their own imagination is just this massively huge ideal thing. I think that if we can ever get it right, and there's this, there's a lot of massive number of challenges with it. It's one of the reasons it's never been maybe come to the level of fruition it should be, is that it's just by far one of the most complicated things you can do, because it has all kinds of really nasty scenarios and really difficult things to deal with. But I think ultimately that has a huge potential for making people really want to spend time in VR, because you can build things and share them with people, and you can create an interactive experience where not only are you both playing a game together or playing an experience together, you're actually sharing your direct imagination. And I think it's like D&D and tabletop has always been like that for people who actually make their own campaigns and things like that. That experience of building this experience and then letting your friends play it, that whole thing is a really dynamic experience that there aren't a lot of other examples of it, and it's really amazing.
Yeah. It's like you inviting people to a public sort of open forum for creating art.
Yep, exactly.
With resources that are just freely available there.
Yep. Oh,
like
there
you've
you
been
go.
doing in real life.
Like Blue Cone Studios, Tuesday nights, 6 to 9. But yeah, I think that that's a huge thing. Interestingly, that's kind of a complicated thing as an artist because most of my background is in the art side. Well, in some ways, that's actually the least from as a artist who is developing things. That's like the least exciting part because in a lot of ways you're not doing it. You're basically giving tools to other people to do it. So that's always a really complicated thing because I also want to make narrative experiences. I like the idea of just, basically if there were more people out there who would share their skills and work with and volunteer their time and do things, I feel like we could create a ton of other really amazing experiences out there. Yeah. And there's a number of ways that you can get those things into being in VR that are pretty easy these days. And so I think those like narrative experiences that really show unique voices, different perspectives, broaden the scope of understanding. That's what builds empathy to me. Like if I can go through an experience that I would never have coming from my particular place in life and see a completely different view of the world, that to me is what really builds empathy and drives that ability for people to connect with other people and VR is very uniquely positioned to do that because you really feel like you're having the experience. And so you can do things that with that experience, it's like you said, I think Miko was saying at the beginning, like VR is so impactful on your emotions that it's a really tricky space and we have to be really careful because we can do really damaging things. Yeah. We can also do insanely good things and really amazing.
When handled correctly.
Yeah, exactly. If we do it right, it can be an incredibly powerful tool for positive emotional experiences, but it's a very tricky thing to balance and figure out.
Yeah, it's like it's more sensitive, but I think because people have this attitude of like, oh, suddenly we have an empathy builder now when it has existed in books, for example, like we were talking about. Well, books have such a range of like detail and topics, and there's a lot of care and years of work that's taken to like tell a story from somebody's perspective. And like I was just reading Pachinko. No, sorry, this not Pachinko. It was I do love Pachinko. Great book. I'm going to plug that. Everyone should read it. It was a different book about. It was called like the Sea of Women Divers, or the Island of Women Divers, or something like that.
Jeju.
Jeju.
Jeju Island.
You told me about this already. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I got that wrong, but I'll fix it. Fix it post. Anyways, but it's like there was such a difficult scene about a massacre that happened in Korea. That I was bawling my eyes out. Like I've never had that reaction to a book. I mean, it was awful, and I mean that in a good, I don't know how to say this. It's like awful, but like not in a rejection way. Like
impactful.
it was so impactful. It was so
very
strong,
visceral and intense.
Yeah, but like that was really late in the book. If I didn't have like that whole buildup of really understanding the characters, like I felt like I was with those characters. I felt like it was happening. Like I was so invested in this whole family and everything that was happening to. Yeah. And it's like, it should be, the care should be taken the same way in VR experiences, which is like, you can't just, I mean, you can if you want to just like throw someone in, but if you think about with a book that's like really stuck with you, it really slowly builds and takes time to get you into that position.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I feel like that translates through so many things. I mean, if you're building investment in the experience and the medium, the setting, whatever it is, over time, for that person. And if you don't gradually do that and sort of engage them into that environment at the right pace, you're just kind of throwing somebody into a serious situation. And then it's too easy to just kind of pull out, dismiss it, throw it away and move on.
I think that's the really hard part about that though is, it's one thing to sit. I mean, it's still, still you have to eat and do other things, so you have to maintain your life. But it's one thing to sit and write a book for a year or 2 years. It's another thing to get a team of people that are all going to work together and do this incredibly complex thing. Yeah. And so I think that's what almost everyone runs into, and it's definitely been the case. And I've mostly worked for smaller studios, and it's always been the case that the dreams are huge. Like what you want to do is huge.
Yeah,
and you get all these massive. Like you're aware of all of the problems with trying to throw somebody straight into a thing, but then you're like, yep, let me book out the time it's going to take to build the narrative experience to get them to the point where they feel good about this thing.
Right.
Oh crap.
Or like
we're out of money and everybody's got to go home.
Yeah. Or
longer has a job.
Or like what you were talking about earlier with the, alternative narrative or like the choose your own adventure, like all those different.
Yeah.
It's like, well,
It's like,
that's
I'd love to
a
have that
whole
other
other.
thing.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'd love to have
Yep.
that the option where you see where you do all the good
Yep.
things. Like,
Yep.
do you have all this money, time, and team?
So I think
Yeah.
like coming up with, I mean, that's, from a design perspective, figuring out ways that you can convey things with, and you went through this experience when you were building the thing. Your experience was that it's how do I solve this problem? How do I communicate the things I need to with a very limited budget, very limited time, very limited number of things I can do. So you figure out what you can cut and what you can do. And I think the more people, but that being said, the more people that were doing these things, it is hard. You go to work all day and you work on this stuff all day. You don't necessarily want to go home and volunteer to do it for something else. But we have, like, in general, most of us that are in the industries have a lot of privilege, have time, have money, have the ability to do some things. Like, we should be putting ourselves out there and trying to help other people do those things, because the voices that need to get out usually aren't really ours. There's plenty of voices about a lot of those narratives, but getting more people to go out and do those things. That being said, there are now, I feel like it has gotten a lot better, particularly in the indie scene. I feel like there are a lot of great voices out there. They just need more people to help put things together and do things. So,
Yeah.
Miko?
This is actually one of the things I wanted to talk about, but I also wanted to add on to what you were saying about user-generated content. I think that still there's not a lot of things out in VR. There are, but not compared to like how many books have ever been written or how many YouTube videos there are.
Yeah.
And so the cool thing about user-generated content is like that really getting rolling will also mean there's just a ton more content.
Exactly. Yep.
And that's why I think that's a really fruitful space for sure.
Yep.
And you're right about that. And it'll come from totally different types of people.
Yeah, exactly. If
Yeah.
you make the tools good enough, then anybody, regardless of their skill set, can come in and create something from their perspective, and they don't have to hire a team. or
Yeah,
get a bunch of
totally.
people, so.
I think I'm really happy you asked this because I'm going to call this a tale of two sister-in-laws.
Nice.
Okay. Are there waffles in this too?
No, not in this
don't know.
one.
Adam Randall.
Yeah, we'll just throw that in because we already have the waffle assets in this podcast.
Nice.
So,
Keep the theme consistent.
yeah, so I think about mainstream and VR a lot because I think we're already tech savvy, like us in the room, and probably a lot of people listening to the podcast are already kind of bought into the idea. As another side tangent, I did some research when Oculus first came out. We were talking to some Oculus developers, and one of them said that like when he wears the headset, his wife will be like, "You look so stupid," and like that's pretty much her take on it.
Yeah.
And that is a huge barrier.
Yeah.
And it's still a barrier. Like, I think it's gone a little better, but I mean, it's not as mainstream as we want it to be.
No, absolutely.
I think probably the most mainstream XR thing is Snapchat filters.
Yep.
And I don't
Camera
think
filters of any kind.
And that was a thing where I remember that was out for years, but the art wasn't as good. It was just
Right.
like, there's a random app you can download and you can be a panda. And it's like, that's cool. But like, it's like kind of a creepy
You can
looking,
be a panda.
kind of like a creepy looking panda. But then like Snapchat, I think did something pretty cool by like making that a thing where now we don't even think twice about that. It's like, of course I can give myself cartoon bunny ears or like a weird beard or something.
Not understanding the crazy complexity of ever getting to that point. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, like all of what went into developing.
Exactly. And
creating that.
Pokemon Go is a good example
Yep,
too,
I was
right?
gonna mention.
Yeah. So when I worked on HoloLens, I worked on it before it was announced. And so there were like 2 years where nobody knew what we were working on. And I had to like lie to my husband about it and stuff. Or just like I'd not tell him. I came up and this, now I'm on another tangent, but I used to come up with these elaborate analogies, you know, because you want to talk about like yeah.
It's like a waffle.
It's like
We
a
added the
waffle.
It's like a waffle.
Yeah, there we go.
It would be like I would be like, okay, I have to tell him about my work stress, but he doesn't know what I work on. So I'd be like, well, imagine I was building a dictionary and I said this is the definition, and they said, well, can we have 7 definitions? And he'd be like, oh, honey, I know this one's really hard. You know, like he just went along with it. But it's like, I mean, really, it was like 2 years that he didn't even know it was even in that
So
space.
crazy.
Anyway, so when Hollands came out, right, and we were visiting his family for Christmas, and I was telling what I'm, trying to describe. So to my one sister-in-law, I was like, it's like, imagine like you're looking at this table and like we could put digital content just on that table. Like you can just see it there. And she's like, oh yeah, cool. And I was like, you accepted that really quickly. And she was just like, well, I have a phone. I can do all sorts of crazy stuff. So yeah, I get it.
Yep.
And it was just like that. She just understood it. But my other sister-in-law,
I was going to say, I was like,
Tale of two
there's
sisters.
more.
Okay. Yeah.
This will be great if they ever listen to it. The third sister-in-law was just like, I still want to play games. Can we borrow a Wii or something? I'm like, yes. We never had this conversation with her. But the second one was just like, oh, it's creepy. And I was like, okay.
Oh.
I'm like,
she's not seeing this. She's imagining it, and she's imagining that it's creepy.
Yeah,
Okay.
like that was her first reaction. She's like, oh, I don't know. That's creepy.
You were just describing this happening.
Yeah.
to her.
And I was like, okay, tell me more. And I was thinking, she's a mom. She's like, she watches TV, reads books, takes care of her kids, does crafts for them.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about it, and like, it just really made me think, if we're not at a point where a person like her understands the appeal, then we're probably not mainstream, right? Like if we're not at a point where someone's like the way that they understand going to a movie, or they understand like even just like, I don't know, watching YouTube, then it's not big enough to bring in all the stuff that we want to bring in.
Yeah.
And we didn't ever actually talk about this, but my PhD was in dance games, and
I know.
Very specific.
2.5 hours.
we're not going to get into it now. But I do want to talk about dance games. The reason why I wanted to study dance games was because at the time when I looked at the other things that were being studied in game research, there was a lot of kind of military research. So there was a lot of like shooting people with guns in VR and like wizard attacks in VR kind of stuff. And I was like, okay, what could I do that would be like unique enough that I could do a thesis on it?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of research to do. And I like dance games. I like dancing. So I was like, okay, this could be really interesting. But the other thing about it is this is like right when the Wii became successful. And, people might tease the Nintendo Wii, and like gamers are like, oh, but the specs and all that. But there's no doubt that it brought a lot of people.
Oh,
in.
it's very successful.
Yeah.
So
It was
successful.
Very successful.
That was a household name.
Yeah.
For the first time. And it also really brought in motion controllers
Yes.
as like a mainstream thing that you could experience in video games.
Yeah, exactly. And they had the bowling game and the tennis game, and they had dancing, and they had lots of stuff. And Just Dance. I mean, there's a lot of dance games I won't bore you with because they're very
all
interesting.
of them very well.
At one point, I did know all of them, really well. But Beat Saber is kind of the modern day equivalent, right?
Yep.
And Dance Central's back. I'm
Dance
glad
Central,
to say.
or Dance Revolution.
Yep.
No, Dance Central's back in VR. I'm really excited for them. They're on
Dance
Quest.
Central's good.
Yeah.
And I'm excited for more dancing for sure. But Just Dance, I wanted to talk about because that is like a game that a series that doesn't get talked about a lot in gaming press, but it makes so much money. I mean, it's on everything. You can use it.
Yeah.
You can hold your phone and do Just Dance with pretty much any console experience. Like, it's like I don't remember a few years ago. I can't give you the exact numbers, but it was like if you looked at the top 10 selling games on a console, like 5 of them would be Just Dance titles. It was crazy. And they don't talk about that, right? No one's really, bringing this up. Another game series that has a very similar trajectory is The Sims.
Yes,
people aren't really writing
definitely.
articles about like how much money The Sims makes, but it has since the very beginning brought in a totally different group of people.
Yeah.
And
speaking of user generated content. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And loyal people. Like I got into The Sims again recently, into Sims 4. And there's so many like great creators, YouTubers and streamers that like this is their thing, is they make houses in The Sims or they tell great stories in The Sims. And it's another one that makes money and a lot of people play it, and it doesn't get talked about that much. And so that's kind of my hope for VR and AR and all this space. I think Beat Saber is a great example, and it's the one that a lot of people
almost
know.
anybody will jump into it and be like, "Oh, this is amazing."
Yeah. But even as much as I love Beat Saber, it is like an intense electronic
It is.
dance game with lightsabers.
Yes.
Like there is a type of person that this was made for.
Oh yeah.
You know, and I just want to see. I think we need the Sims or the Just Dance, like the thing that brings in my sister-in-law,
Right.
that makes her say, "Yeah, we do need an Oculus Quest." That's what I want to see.
So to briefly dig into kind of some of the conclusions of your thesis on all of that, what was it, or what is it about experiences like The Sims, or like games that were initially released for the Wii, or these dance games that do so well? Like, what is it about them that does so well? And then why aren't they talked about as much in media, even if they're making so much more money?
I don't know. I mean, I think they're just such a different audience. Like, I think I don't have any proof of this, but my guess is that many of those people don't identify as a gamer, and they're probably not reading game articles. They're probably just people who tend to buy these games. And they have their own communities.
Okay.
So, and maybe there's just like, there's no drama there, really.
Yeah.
There's no like,
Well, there's no like strong identity around a hardcore gamer type culture. So that's why like you wouldn't call yourself a gamer unless you really enjoy those kinds of experiences. And not specifically.
I think there's probably also just the problem of people, the existing game industry development community, not embracing that as a concept. Like, I think largely we have this historic things that are considered cool games and that gamers want to make, and that game publishers, most of the people that are running game studios have been developers or have been in that community.
That's
forever.
the aspiration.
They just, they don't think of, that's not the cool game. In a lot of ways, I think there's just a problem with, it's like you said about the Wii. It's like, it's amazingly successful. It did all these things, but your usual gamer will just, and that, when you say gamer, you also are, that is the same community that is building the games.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just historically, it's like, even if it's a super valid idea and it's going to hit the mainstream, it's like you've seen with a lot of like, conflict and big issues that have come up in the game industry. Ultimately, gamers tend to be protective of their realm, and they don't want things that they actually, like a lot of gamers, don't want things to come in that are mainstream, because they want the gamer mentality to be continued. And I think it's the same thing for game developers. Like, they've got this idea of what they think is a cool game industry, and for them, maybe they don't want those other games to come in. And I think dance games probably fit in that category to some degree, although I think that's gotten a lot better over the years. I think now there's a lot more acceptance of dance games, and particularly things like Beat Saber. But you're right, it's still designed to make the dance game cool to the gamer community.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what's going to happen next. Like the big rise of dance game. There's DDR, and we respect the arcade phase of dance games for sure.
Right. That
There's
person
DDR,
dancing like crazy off in the corner of the room.
Yeah,
My Mike still has a bunch of DDR DVDs in our
Nice.
apartment, but we don't have the mat
Awesome.
to go along
we
with
have
it.
the mats if
no.
you want to
There you
come
go.
over.
There you go.
Shit.
Dance
Sure, you
party.
can get them used these days too.
Yeah. And then like I think the Connect phase was another really great time. And what was so exciting about it to me and why I wanted to study it is because there was like an easy one-to-one relationship there. Like in other types of games, you'd have to teach a gesture that a Wiimote or the Connect could understand. But in a dance game, it was like, do the thing you're seeing. Like you have a body, we're looking at your skeleton, just
Mimic
do
the
this.
body.
Yeah.
Everyone kind of understands what that is. It's just so accessible.
Yeah.
And it's like it's just fun, right? And the Just Dance happens to be one of the like more flexible scored dance games. Like it's like you 3-year-olds play it and probably get a pretty good score, but it's okay, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're
You're
having a good
fun.
time.
Yeah.
That's what's
Yeah.
important.
So I think maybe it's just like there is not much to talk about. Like when Just Dance comes out again, it has new content as new songs, but they definitely do updates to the UI and everything, but there's not a lot to say. Like there's not
Format more so.
Yeah.
Do you think that there is an element of the competition that is involved in a lot of more of the hardcore sort of gamer stereotypical games and experiences that doesn't quite. It's just not as prominent in games like DDR or like Dance Central, or even like Wii Sports games. It was more playful. It was easier for people to jump in, and you didn't get essentially shamed for not being good at it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's definitely a level where they're very competitive, but I think there is an interesting aspect there because it's about you and how you move and what you look like, which can be kind of like intimidating or stressful.
Much in the way actually going out and going to a dance floor would be.
Yeah.
Similar social
like looking
dynamics there.
silly kind of it's definitely a thing that concerns people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point too. The competitive aspect, and
Like
I think
Sims isn't based on competition really at all.
no,
Well, it is like, but it has rewards. It's like self-competition, right? Where
Yeah.
you get rewarded for things that you're doing.
It has
There is
progression.
there's like
progression.
you work
advancement.
for things, and there is you earn rewards throughout the experience, but there's not that sort of like competitive element where you can potentially be excluded from the cool
Hey,
group.
isn't
at
that
the
an
end.
example of that term you were talking about earlier, where we couldn't think of an example? Not in the recording earlier today. It was what's that non-zero sum game?
yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
So it's
There you go.
going towards
Right.
it's going towards the ideal of a like those kinds of game experiences
Right.
are closer to a would it be a non-zero sum game?
Yeah, because
Yeah,
a zero
'cause
sum
as-
game is a
yes.
win-lose, and a non-zero sum is like nobody really loses. So in this
Yeah.
case, with like, I don't know if that is the case with the
There-
Sims,
there's
but it's
not an
something close
advantage
to
to
it,
it.
right?
Well, yeah. If someone does well in The Sims, it doesn't mean someone else can't do well. in The
Yes,
Sims.
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
I think the Sims competitive angle would be more like who's built the best house in the
The most
community.
complex.
Yeah,
most
And I
interesting or
think
whatever.
that's that kind of creative competition is really exciting to people,
Uh-huh.
and it's more about like it's user generated content again, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
I actually just remembered a VR game I really like that's relevant, which is Vacation Simulator. Have you guys played that?
Vacation.
I
no,
actually haven't, but I've
there's so
heard like
many
amazing
simulators.
things, and every time I hear about it, I'm like, damn, I need to play
Yeah.
that game.
Well,
I keep forgetting.
It's the same people as Job Simulator.
Oh, right.
I
Oh, gosh.
enjoyed that as well, but I think Vacation Simulator to me was like a whole next level.
Okay.
I've had people say that there are really, really interesting things in there from a design perspective too. That it was-
There are, I mean, it's very well designed.
Yep.
I first played it when I was at a very stressful time in my
Okay.
work life, and I was like, I'm not taking this off. Like, I'm voluntarily doing yoga on a beach with a computer.
Yeah.
Like, I'm on vacation right now,
Yeah.
and you can't stop me.
Right.
And it's like I think it could be that it's that kind of game. I mean, I think it's coming to Quest soon. I heard it was being ported to
Okay.
Quest.
Yeah, they already have Job Simulator.
Oh yeah.
Quest, so.
I really hope it comes there because the thing is, like, I think that's the kind of thing that could have mainstream appeal. Like, the whole concept is that you are on vacation and
Yeah.
you can do whatever
Yep.
you want. Like, it's like you can make s'mores on a campfire in the forest, or you can
Right.
go swimming in the beach, or go snorkeling, or like basically scuba diving
I
on
mean,
the bottom
honestly,
of the
that's
ocean.
the first kind of thing I look for.
Yeah.
Because interestingly, I'm not actually that much of a gamer in a lot of ways either, in the sense that game mechanics have never been what motivated me in games. It was more exploration, like the kind of core basic things of exploration and being immersed in an environment and being immersed in a story. And so the first thing I do is I go and I look for crazy weird nature simulations or AV, like audio, what you call it? Audio
Sound
Binaural?
environment, like the soundscape.
Visualize.
Ambiance.
visualizers, audio
Oh, got it.
visualizers and things like that, because that whole like just being in an immersive experience and just having a sensory experience that's a huge part of why I love VR. And so where I don't want to have to like do something to have that simulation experience. I just want to have it. I want to be there
Right,
and relax
yeah.
in it and enjoy
Yeah,
it.
and I think it's a very I can't recommend this game enough. Like, I think if you have like a family member that's not into VR yet, I think this is a really good first one.
Yeah.
They definitely thought about comfort, like it's like very teleport only as a movement. And then, there's just like and you have a little hotel suite where you have a little like fake Nintendo-esque
play games in your game.
Yeah, you get to play games in your game.
Get super meta in there.
There's like a bathtub where you could like just throw in a rubber ducky. Yes. And it just feels like it. I think that gets close to like that kind of like mental like a therapy kind of experience where like we don't allow ourselves to just kind of relax and enjoy things.
Let go. Yeah. Remove the pressure and weight from your regular everyday life and all that tension and competition in the real world.
Yeah. And so I almost think like if you could do almost the mashup of like a vacation simulator with user generated content or something where like people
build sandcastles.
Build crazy relaxation environments. I mean, like I've been doing a number of friends of mine worked on built VR chat, which historically it's gotten kind of a bad rap because it was a very challenging thing at the beginning, like all the abuse scenarios and things like that. But there's a crazy number of interesting experiences in there, and a ton of them are just like one of them is like this giant column tree thing with elevators on the sides, and it's beautiful. Like
I have so many questions about VR chat.
It's a fascinating
very
thing.
fascinating.
Yeah. But I've built a lot of worlds in Unity for it because it's very easy to just jump in there and build a world in Unity and upload it. And I think in general that ability has meant that there's just a ton of interesting content. The challenge is you have to have friends in there that you actually want to hang out with and not just randomly be in public spaces and listening to everyone. But they've got really good tools for managing it, whereas they didn't used to. And so it got a bad reputation, but ultimately there's a ton of really fascinating, like people have built really beautiful worlds in there, and there's like places that are just very peaceful and relaxing and that kind of thing. And I'd love to see more content that's like that. I feel like there's this, you mentioned earlier the idea that it was like that kind of ability to succeed at the game and have fun, even like as 3-year-old dancing or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, why is that? Like, I feel like a lot of people see that as a negative thing a lot of times, or that it needs to be competitive and
like somebody needs to be able to win.
Why does it have to be challenging? Like, I can just go have fun. There was that half and half game. I don't know if you've seen that. It just came out recently.
Yes. It's just a
more
social
like
experience.
It's a social experience, and there is a little bit of game. It's games.
Is this a VR game?
Yeah, it's a VR game.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
So you play it, and it's got a dance game in it actually, and the dance game in it is just pose matching type stuff. But it's just so. It's simple, but it's just really enjoyable to play. Yeah. And it's that type of thing where they didn't worry about making it about a competitive game. They just created experiences that feel good. And I don't understand why there's not more of that. I don't understand why there's not more of an acceptance of, I can just do something because it's enjoyable. I don't have to be like good at it. I don't have to skill build. I don't have to progress.
Right.
Yeah.
I can just do something because it's enjoyable.
I feel like, and you worked on Minecraft?
Miko did.
Miko worked on Minecraft. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So
Jay was having trouble because your names are so similar. So we were gonna call you guys Miko.
You can nice.
Yeah. Oh, that's happened a lot. Yeah. Especially at Starbucks.
I had the same problem in the Katie Kelly episode because we had Kelly and Katie.
People think I'm Katie Kelly and that I work for Altspace, and I'm just like, yes, I do. What do you need to know?
But like, I've even accidentally called you Katie on a number of occasions following that whole recording.
Just because it got that ingrained.
Yeah, Mike does it. It's weird. At weird times, and I'm kidding.
Oh, jeez.
Awkward.
Just kidding. Okay, so Miko worked on Minecraft. Yeah.
So, Miko, you worked on Minecraft.
I thought we were going to get through the whole episode
without talking about that.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. I mean, so that is one of my favorite examples of that kind of potential for a game where you can basically just drop in there and do anything you want. You can explore, you can role play, you can make competitive environments, but you can also just build or literally do nothing but wander around and explore. And the most fun about it is that you can do that by yourself or with a whole server full of other people.
I mean, when I was just a fan of Minecraft before I ever knew I could work on it, I remember being really impressed because I think much like we were talking about just making things mainstream, I think Minecraft taught people about servers. Yeah. I think before that, it was like random
the WoW
parent.
People knew it, but that was it.
Yes. Yeah. It was like no random parent that wants to have their kid play a game is going to figure out how to set up a server on their own PC. And I feel like that was a really special thing that people now just like you're like,
Get
yeah,
the
of course, we
concept.
got
Yeah.
our own Minecraft or whatever.
Yeah,
It's
sorry,
like,
my kids play on a Minecraft server all the time.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, that's where their world lives.
Yeah. No, yeah, I know it's very relevant to the user generated conversation too. There's some really interesting.
Also one of my favorite games.
Yeah. There's some really great YouTube videos about how there was sort of a rise of gaming YouTube and Minecraft at the same time. And how having Minecraft community content was really interwoven
Massive
with
like
injection of
Twitch streamers and live streaming games kind of arising along in parallel, at least the adoption of Minecraft.
So is the conclusion there that like why would that be connected? Because people like sharing.
Oh, it just happened to be historically that
timing.
as YouTube was really rising and like gaming videos on YouTube were rising was when Minecraft became popular.
I see.
Yeah.
And so it just happened to be that a lot of the first big influencers in gaming YouTube were Minecraft creators, and then Minecraft itself became such a household name worldwide.
Right.
It's like just all very related, you know.
Yeah.
It's interesting to go back and kind of see the history of how that all happened.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I would imagine that there is some sort of correlation between like if it's approachable, like anyone can get in there and mess around with some blocks. I mean, they use it to teach in schools. And so if that's the case, well, and you're able to make it public on YouTube, well, it's just like conducive to making it viral, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Minecraft's a good example of empowering constraints, which is a phrase I really like, but a lot of other people are like, oh, I don't like that.
Oh,
No,
Yeah.
I like
I like it. What does it
Empowering
mean?
constraints. I love
So
that.
empower, like you can, I mean, like, you know, someone could give a child Maya and be like, you can build anything you
Exactly.
want.
This is so powerful.
Yeah.
Maya being a 3D
Yes,
3D
3D,
building
yeah.
tool.
Yes.
Yeah.
good,
Or
good
like,
to explain.
and there's
Yeah.
lots of 3D creating tools, right?
Yeah.
But
Blender,
I-
3ds Max.
Yeah, and
Unity.
even games, you know, like there's lots of user generated content games, but Minecraft, because it uses like the voxel, like having cubes, it's all about the cube,
Yep.
right?
Nice, simple foundational rule.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just stacking blocks.
Everything takes up a cube of space, and like sometimes you have things like stairs that are slightly different shaped.
Yeah.
Then you can abstract things very quickly.
Yeah.
And you can do things like pixel art very quickly because the pixels directly map to cubes.
Yep.
And so it basically allows you to be successful faster, right? So I can make something that kind of looks like a house much faster because like how Legos are a system that
Yeah.
makes sense, and they're all blocks.
And you can make that house look as good as anyone else can make that house in the same amount of time, in the sense that it's not about getting down to some kind of extra small detail level.
Yeah. It's not about
You just
like
get good at building that
ultra
thing.
realism
Yeah.
at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Okay, I see it. So the empowering constraints is like you are constrained by it just being like voxels. Like you can't add in curvy lines. Like you can't. It's not a whole type of like an art toolbox. You have basically, essentially, kind of like one thing that you can work with.
Yeah, like the phrasing of empowering constraints, I can't remember. My husband taught it to me, so now he'll be like, why? No, he would never say that, but he'd be like, oh, you used my thing. That's cool. That's what he's really going to say.
All right, we'll just say we'll credit him.
Yeah. He came up with
man.
it. Awesome. It's about like, let's say like you were going to make something for a new device and it only has like 100 megabytes of space that you can use. That could be seen as an empowering constraint.
Yeah.
It's like on one hand you could say, oh no, it has
It's
such
a limitation.
It's a limitation.
Yeah.
But another way to think about it is, well, if we only have this much space, what can we do with it? And even going back to like the game jam thing, like I know on Itch.io they have sometimes they have like game jams that will be like you can only make like 64 by 64 pixels. That's your screen.
Yeah.
And so that would be another example of like what could you do if you only have that many pixels?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Some of the most creative ideas. I mean, if you've ever, read about or done research on creators or artists or whatever, it's like it often comes from restrictions and constraints that they had, because
I think most
otherwise they
artists
would
like
have,
that.
come up with the typical road that they were trying to go on, and they had to get creative because of those constraints.
It generally seems like it focuses you on a specific thing, and so you're much better of a problem solver when you have a very specific set of criteria and you can go in and try to solve that problem. And I think definitely the art, that's a really common thing in all arts, and fine arts included and everything. like just having a subject that's very specific will help you isolate what you're doing and focus on
Yeah.
and do those
Right.
things. Having a set of constraints about your palette, how many colors you can use.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's amazing how much we actually want confines, even though if you ask everybody, they're like, I want to be able to do anything.
I want as much space
Yeah,
as
yeah.
possible, as many
But
choices.
Then you sit down and you just stare at the canvas.
Yeah.
No idea.
Yeah.
What is that? Decision paralysis,
Yeah.
essentially.
Right. Well, that's what a lot of
Oh,
people
yeah.
think with like, I'd just love to have, like, if I just had all of the money in the
If I just had more
world and I
options,
didn't
more
have a
means.
job and I could do anything I wanted. I'm like,
Be like, nope.
I mean, like, you'd have no idea what to do.
yeah, you would just be like, ah.
You'd just have an aneurysm, and then
Yeah, it feels
So
like-
don't do that because it's horrible.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, that's like if you were to craft a game experience that has no guidelines. Like, there's no actual rules, which maybe that's why we're all paralyzed about what to do in life.
Right. Yeah.
Because there's a distinct lack of guidelines in a lot of situations, and then you're just like, oh God, what do I do?
Right.
But games and experiences that are guided like that can be satisfying because there is a limit to your options, and so you have to make not necessarily, they don't seem easier, but they are more directional choices. You
Distinct.
have-
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that makes me think of also like games are really interesting because you know that you can win essentially, where like in life you don't. And so people are attracted to games or they feel like they keep trying and keep getting at something.
You can see a goal of some
Right,
sort.
because you're like, well, the whole point is that they created this so that I can win. Like, no real game is going to be super successful if you fail every single time, or
Yeah.
it might have like, you know, a hot second of fame or whatever it is, right? I'm sure they're out there kind of, but ultimately they want to create, you know, you want to create stuff for people because they can accomplish like that,
Yeah, I
get
think
over that
that's
challenge.
such a like I'm sure Miko knows a lot about this as a designer. Like I generally like I like thinking about design, but I've never done it as a job. But I think that whole idea of like reward systems and like frequency of rewards and,
Gamification of that
and
whole.
those aspects, like I don't react to those personally very much at all. Like I generally have never liked playing games that are all about me accomplishing something and then moving to a next stage and
Yeah,
accomplishing
like
you
a
just
sort of
like the
completion.
exploration. I
yeah,
like being
exactly.
There. Yeah.
So it's fascinating. Like the idea that you need that. Like I always imagine like rats being tested with like sugar cubes and things
Yeah.
like that. Like why is that satisfying? 'Cause, I mean, to me, it's not. So it's always been hard to
yeah,
have
it's
insight
like
onto it.
there's yeah, I mean that's a big can of
It's a
worms.
giant
Yeah,
can
no,
of worms.
it is.
I mean, there's like a psychological kind of like background to that, right? I mean, it's actually like kind of based in like casino design.
No, yeah,
and,
Yeah.
You know, they're
really good at it.
Yeah, and then it kind of feels old hat now, but like kind of the big rise of like Zynga and like free to play games
Yep.
and all that. It
What's
means
Zynga?
Zynga is a company that like first I think was big on Facebook.
Yeah.
It was like I forgot
Farmville.
Farmville was the
Thank you.
huge one.
Farmville
I
was
know
like
Farmville.
big,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because
And-
there's like this regular.
But they did a ton of them.
And
yeah.
essentially, like any game that's free to play, and you have enough of a population, you can run little experiments. Even so, even if there's someone who designed in the first place and said, "I think you should get this many rewards at this time," really somebody's probably looking at a lot of numbers and seeing that you play longer when every
Yeah.
3 minutes you get 5 cubes versus
Right,
every
exactly.
2 minutes.
some
Exactly.
A/B
Yeah.
testing
Yeah.
on different
Yes.
groups.
Well, it's definitely rooted in real reactions and behaviors.
It's
Yeah.
optimized
Not like,
for.
It's optimized
for that
yeah.
attention.
level. Yeah.
What were we talking about?
Well,
I don't know.
so
I just mentioned that I just am
Oh,
fascinated
yeah.
by the concept. That
Oh.
that's,
Well,
that's such a standard requirement to games. This idea
Yeah.
that like and for me it was never terribly appealing. So it's always been kind of confusing. Like I love the idea of having more experiences that are just about enjoying yourself. Or
Yeah.
but I do get that like if I read a book and there's no point of conflict that gets resolved, I don't enjoy that. So that's
Yeah.
an interesting challenge. Like there's something in there that there needs to be some kind of conflict and resolution
Yeah.
before it's a good experience. Maybe.
I was gonna say there's still some sort of reward function that you resonate with in circumstances because I feel like we're all fundamentally, at least on some level, operating that way. But there's a lot of people I would relate to your sentiment in that in games like Minecraft, I don't tend to go for like amassing resources or anything that is more of a like goal oriented. It's more like I just want to go and explore that area
Actually,
over
discovery is interesting though. 'Cause
Yeah.
discovery, like being
It's-
the first person to find an area.
Yeah,
That's
something
definitely
cool.
part of the exploration. That is a sense of accomplishment.
That
and-
is the
and
reward function.
Yeah,
at the end.
and
So-
creation and creating things and getting a sense for people appreciating things you've created is also a reward system.
Definitely, like recognition for that work that you put into it, or maybe reaching a certain point where you're like, I built this thing and it is relatively satisfying to what I initially envisioned.
Yeah, for those like sandbox games,
Yeah.
for a lot of people, it's hard to start them because they want the goals and they want the objectives and they want.
There's not enough
something-
structure at the beginning.
And so if you're not a person that already gravitates towards that, then you kind of need a community that gives you those goals that are like, you watch a video and you're like, oh wow, they made this like spaceship in Minecraft. I want to make a spaceship. You kind of need that kind of thing too. And even The Sims is like that too.
Yeah. It's like user generated guidance or
Yeah.
structure rather than the
Yeah.
game being a more open sandbox.
Yeah, totally.
Well, going back to the experience, like the vacation simulator, and actually, I'm sorry to bring this back to your tale of two sister-in-laws, but like it's been bugging my
pretty
brain.
catchy name,
Yeah, it is. It really is. So in all of these experiences that we're talking about, I mean, I think that there are a lot of people that will cling to that, like what you're saying, the user-generated content or dance games. Like even my mom can play Beat Saber or Fruit Ninja. That doesn't mean that she knows how to talk about it, look for it herself. Like I have to provide those things to her.
Yeah.
And I think in a lot of ways in life, that's what we need, somebody to expose us. That doesn't mean we're necessarily going to go back to it.
Yeah.
Like in the case of your sister-in-law, the even I think, in the case of
I didn't name them, so maybe.
yeah. in the case of sister-in-law one.
Number 3.
Well, I was shocked that both of them were even able to visualize what you were saying, because I've had with my family, and these are smart women who are like nurse practitioners who deal with real actual problems and shit every day. They just like glaze over it, and no matter how many times I've explained to them the difference between VR and AR, they don't understand. And they actually, I guarantee you, they do not know that the very face, what's it called? The thing we were just talking about, the like faces.
Selfie
filter
filters.
chat
Selfie
filters,
filters.
Yeah, the
Selfie.
Snapchat filters,
That's
or
AR.
on a when you're on a phone call or
Yeah.
whatever it is, not even in Snapchat. They use them all the time. They use them with their kids, all of this stuff. I don't think they have any idea that that's augmented reality.
Yeah.
And so it's like a vocabulary thing as well. And with the vacation simulator, it's like, well, do you guys think that you would be interested in that if you didn't work in the industry? Like what actually makes you enjoy that? Because I feel like we do have people that listen because we have family and friends who who aren't at all in the industry, or maybe they're interested, but like, why should they be drawn in? What can you get out of it?
Yeah, like why is it a
know?
worthwhile use of time?
Yeah, because with
for-
like vacation simulator, well, I'd rather just go on a vacation myself or something. And you could argue like, okay, well, yeah, but you could do this anytime. But it's like, does it actually, these things that we're talking about, like, what does it actually do for you that you can't get in other places, or that keeps you coming back?
I mean, that's for me. I think that sense of being transported to another place. I think that inherently, if people are exposed to it and understand that it exists, understand that they can, and Vacation Simulator is an example of it. I think there are a lot of different experiences that fit into that category. Like just being able to take you outside of your current reality and your current moment into a very different experience and very different place. That's a huge thing. And I think most people, having experienced that, at least at a degree, want to do it. I think there's a lot of limitations right now. Just buying a headset's expensive. Is still, even though it's gone down a lot, it's still expensive, and like the comfort of the devices is still a huge issue. Comfort in the experience is a huge issue, but it's gotten significantly better. And I think most people, if they felt at ease with that technological part of it and those complications, would want to have that experience again, because I think it is. Without doing anything, if you can be basically transported to another environment and state of existence, that feels like something that most people would want to experience if they didn't have those hurdles.
What is it that it's adding to like your general life, like fulfillment? Like why is it a worthwhile use of your time? Why do you feel that way?
I mean, I think that comes down to the specific experiences. So I don't I think that there's an underlying ability as a tool and as a technology for VR to do that thing where it shifts your state of being or shifts your state of reality to a very different thing. As far as what that experience is and why it's good, that's up to the content creators to start building things that actually do that. I've had like one of the first things I did was I just played Skyrim in VR, right? I had played Skyrim a bunch and it was a fun game and I enjoyed it, but I kind of stopped playing it at some point because I was like, okay, I get it. And I've played through a lot of it and I just don't feel motivated to finish games. That's not how my psyche works.
Completion is not the goal.
But it was pretty and I wanted to wander around and do things and I'd play it. And then when I got VR and I was like, oh, wait, I can play Skyrim in VR? And I started playing and I was like, oh my God, this is like vastly better than playing it on a 2D screen because I actually get all of those experiential elements and I don't even care if I accomplish anything in the game.
Yeah.
I just want to wander around and do things and this gives me a reason to do it. And then after that I played a lot of it and then I played Lone Echo, which is a game on Oculus, which is a full narrative experience. And that was very much like playing through a movie. Yeah. And it was a very different experience than I'd ever had. Like you feel like you are in a full long movie. Yeah. And it's and that kind of thing, like if you can get people to the point where they can have those kinds of experiences, then that can be very like, especially the better we get at making them, those can be huge life-changing type experiences if you do the storytelling really well. I think that you have to get people to the point where they feel comfortable doing that though. And so I think smaller experiences that make you at least take you out of your current space and give you a new experience are huge, but then you can do anything. Honestly, it's just a tool for putting people in a different experience. So
yeah, I think it has to solve a problem, just like any other thing that you're gonna buy or spend time on. Yeah. So, like for my sister-in-law who has 2 young children now. And, she has like an iPad or something where she puts on Baby Einstein to entertain them in the car. Like maybe, when iPads first came out, that would have seemed weird. Like, why do I need this thing? And I kind of remember before everybody had a cell phone. Like I remember when I was like the first person who had like texting on my cell phone and like internet on my cell phone, and other people and other friends of mine would be like, why do you need texting? Like, what's that?
Yeah,
why?
Totally.
And then like real fast that became like, everybody.
That's why you need it.
Yeah. And that's a thing where like, we don't even think twice about that now. In fact, we have so many other ways to send messages to people other than texting. But at the time when that became big, I remember thinking it's kind of like telepathy suddenly became real. Like my friend who lives in Florida, if I had a joke I wanted to remind him of right now, within seconds, he knows what I'm thinking.
Right.
And you never said it out loud.
And I never said it out loud, and no matter how far away he was, right? And so I think it's got to solve a problem, just like any other product. And so maybe for my sister-in-law, that means something that her kids will enjoy. And when she's working around the house, like I know a lot of people are having their kids experience VR, and like Rec Room, I know is like lots of kids play Rec Room.
Yeah, tons of kids.
And actually the last time I was in Rec Room, they have this like kind of cool museum someone built with like a World War II kind of like bunker experience.
Oh, wow.
And I went in there and it's just a bunker experience, and I could hear like 5 kids and they were just role playing that they were little soldiers running around. And I was like, this is sort of like the best playground. Like they probably don't know each other in real life, or maybe they do, but like this is like as if they just went to the local jungle gym together. So I think that's really going to be a big thing, is just like, what's the point where I'm like, okay, I see why this brings a lot of value to my life. Right. And it's going to take a long time to get there, probably, just like it did for phones and lots of other types of technology.
Long term, that presence aspect, like that, just being able to be in a place with somebody you know, or even somebody you don't know, and have that kind of interaction without the limitations of time and space, like that's huge. Like I think that'll be a long-term real problem-solving benefit of, I want to play a game with my brother, but he's in Alabama, so I have to figure out some way to do that. And it's such a different experience to play something with somebody when they're physically in that, or not physically, but if we virtually in that space with you. Yeah, if we don't live near each other, then this could be the next thing, right? It's almost there. I feel like some people are already doing it, and it's almost there.
that we're at the point where I could be like, hey, my friend who lives in China, like I have a friend, Paola Paulino, who you guys should meet. She's amazing. But she's a VR educator in China. And so she's been organizing, like, I don't even know what's going on. Like, I just get a tweet that's like, VR flash mob in Rec Room now. And I'm like, whoa,
What?
okay, I guess I'm supposed to be there. So I haven't actually gone to do it yet. But I mean, she's been just organizing all this fun stuff for us to do together. And like, I think that's where it really starts, right? Is like, for people already, like, yeah, and people who are in it. But I think back to what you're trying to say is like, if I wasn't into this, I think it just has to solve a need. Like, I don't really like to exercise. I do like to dance.
Oh,
you know?
Yeah.
And so
I have a friend who just bought her Quest, and most of what she does is she gets up every morning and plays Beat Saber for exercise.
yeah,
and loves it.
I mean, that's a thing that's very real. And like even something like Skyrim, like I was really hoping those Omni treadmills would get to a nice place, because when I saw that, I was like, I'm gonna play Skyrim.
Yeah.
I've only gone like a couple hours in, and I want to play it in VR and just walk.
Oh yeah,
I want to
Forever.
run
Just
across
wander around.
Tamriel. A marathon.
You know, I was like, that's the thing that'll get me to like jog.
Yeah.
like,
I was having visions when that was when that Kickstarter took off of like basically the future arcade is just a bunch of people that are really in shape because they've been running marathons
Exactly,
across like
Because
World
this
of
treadmill
Warcraft.
you guys are talking about, like, can go in many
physical,
directions. Like, you
yeah.
can kind of
You're-
do all the movement
An
you need,
Omni
but stay in a small
treadmill,
space.
yeah.
Your waist is strapped into like a little railing thing,
Oh
and
my
you can
God.
spin around
Yeah, I
and
definitely
run.
want to do that.
Yeah, an omni treadmill means like
Yeah.
omnidirectional. And like from an academic standpoint, like when we go these like VR conferences and stuff, when I was in school, there are huge versions of this, like
Oh, yeah.
entire rooms that are like giant,
Oh,
like 4
geez.
treadmills rolling in every direction.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, there was the one on Kickstarter that was pretty popular.
That one was a little more reasonable for a
Yeah.
house.
Put it
Well,
in a
yeah. I
house,
mean,
yeah.
I think that was
That's the trick.
starting
Yeah.
to get to the point where like you could reasonably own one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with the Quest, it's no wires, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's like
Mhm.
we're getting
No other
so
complications,
close
yeah.
Right.
to that point.
Although there's a big problem because those MMOs are huge, or RPGs are huge, and of course when you're playing with the 2D game,
oh, yeah.
you run everywhere all the time.
Yep.
Like you can't do that. Like
Yeah.
there's no way you're gonna run across the whole thing. I
Yeah.
mean, that's
I
like
know.
a crazy distance.
Which
Yeah.
take you much longer to finish the game.
That's when they'll add like a new design mechanism, which is, well, they'll just add in like a what those sky trains, you know, or whatever it is, like in the airports where it's like, all right,
Oh,
I'm gonna
yeah.
stop off on
Take a
this.
trolley.
Yeah, but maybe in like those types of games, it needs to be more majestical or something. And so it's like, I'm gonna hop on a dragon and I'm gonna sit for a little bit and fly
Yeah.
around or whatever. Yeah.
That's actually one of the, I feel like, barriers to people using VR a lot more, or at least as much as people will sit on an MMO and play World of Warcraft all day long. You just can't do that in most VR experiences.
Yeah.
I think it's actually, I think you can get, I mean, I'm just talking about myself here. I don't know actually about research data, but for me, it got notably better. So I started off moderately sick after like a half an hour, 45 minutes.
You gain
Yeah.
a tolerance.
I can get in there for like 7 or 8 hours now, actually.
Holy
So if you
wow.
do it enough, I think you build up a tolerance for it. and it
I've
doesn't
heard
bother
that. I don't think you're alone. I've heard that
Yeah.
you can build
Yeah.
up a tolerance.
I don't know if that's
But the
universal,
thing
and
is,
maybe certain
most
people
people aren't
can.
going to be inclined
Yeah,
to do that
yeah.
unless you work in it or unless something's really dragging you in.
Yeah, that was. I mean, that's what happened with me with the Skyrim stuff.
Yeah.
and Lone Echo too. I played that game
Lone
from beginning to
Lone
end.
Echo actually made me sick, so I didn't finish it. But
Yeah.
maybe I should go back and take my time doing it.
I think that's the thing is like everybody's, it's such a personal
Yes.
thing.
Yeah.
How it
Yeah,
makes you
absolutely.
sick.
Very broad variety of sensitivity.
I also worry about that is like when people, if they try one and they get sick, they might think that they can't do it ever.
Oh, for
They have one bad
sure.
experience.
Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, I work in VR right now. So like, I feel like I have a pretty high tolerance too.
Yeah,
There was a game Shadow Point by CodeSync. I don't know if you played
I
that.
played it. I think I remember
You
the
told
name.
me about this one,
Yeah, I
because
really
you said it
want
had
you
really
to
good
play it.
storytelling. Now I haven't played it yet, and I was actually afraid you were going to bring this up. But my defense is that I didn't think it was on the Quest yet. And
It's on the Quest, yeah.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
I think has it always been from when the Quest came out?
I don't know about from
That's
when
not
it
the one
came
that
out.
Patrick Stewart does the voicing for, is
It
it?
is,
Oh,
yeah.
okay, yes. I
Okay,
did play a
well-
moderate amount of it.
Yeah.
Because I swear I looked it up because we like moved apartments and then I didn't have the Rift set up, but then we got the Quest shortly afterwards, and I looked for what you told me and I didn't find it, and I was like, the whole mental model, like, do I set up the Rift right now? And I was like, no.
Yeah.
I actually don't know if it's on the Rift, but it's definitely on the Quest.
Oh,
That's how
really?
I played it. Yeah.
Okay, maybe I just looked it up wrong or something. But anyways, I'm excited to try it. But sorry to take away from that. Yeah.
I really wanted to shout it out because I
Yeah.
really liked that game so much.
Yeah, I was definitely enjoying it. Were you
Yeah.
bringing it to do with the sickness part of it, or
No, more that like that game is the one where I drained the Quest battery constantly.
like you just
Oh.
could stay in.
I played it like constantly for 3 days straight. I
Wow.
was like, I have to finish this
Yeah,
game.
yeah.
I felt very pulled into the story.
It was good. It's good characters. And the
Yeah.
puzzles are very solvable but interesting.
Yeah, it's a game where like a girl's gone missing, and essentially like there was all these portals, and when you walk through a portal, you're always you, but she is in a different time of her
Right.
life.
She's progressing
Yeah.
through her life.
And so it's cool because it's non-linear too. Like you can enter the portals in any order, really, but it's just a different moment. And it's kind of like Time Traveler's Wife, if you read that or watched the movie. But essentially, like she's just getting older, but you're popping in and out of her timeline.
Yeah.
And I found I was actually just like so invested in her as a character, and I felt her frustrations, and I felt like really like she has all these different phases of her life in this other world, and I thought it was just really well written.
Yeah,
So-
I definitely was. I was really enjoying it. I don't think I quite finished it, but I got a pretty long way
Yeah.
through it. I really
It's
did enjoy it.
a really good story, and I think that
Yeah.
I wanted Kelly to play because
I know. I definitely will. And especially now that I know it's on the Quest. Because I just haven't gotten the heart to set up my Rift sensors since I got the Quest. But, well, it's interesting because, like, when you were initially talking about, like, I guess it's because it's how I posed the question, which is like, well, if you were not in the industry, like, what would bring you in and all of this stuff? But when you were talking about it has to solve a problem, I kept thinking like, but so many experiences that I love like don't solve any, I don't think they solve any problems. This is what I'm thinking, right?
Yeah.
And when I think about, because it's funny that books came up kind of early on, because I actually constantly think about books as a case for it's a lot like VR. I mean, a lot of people, VR is very social. VR is a bizarre thing because it is very social, but sometimes I have these lovely experiences where like late at night, I, put on the headset and have an experience. It doesn't even need to be a game. It's kind of more story driven or something. And it's like, well, that's how we read. It's often like, late at night and we're doing it on our own. We're not sharing that with somebody. And reading can be super educational. And there are some people who only read, kind of nonfiction educational things. But what about like the fiction and the storytelling? And in my head, I was thinking like, that's not solving a problem. But I guess my argument against myself now is the problem that it's solving, or like, I guess I'll call the problem a gap. And the gap is like wonder. Because we as humans love imagining and we wonder about so many things. And we dream about literally dream and also metaphorically dream about like bizarre, environments and worlds and stories we tell ourselves. And that's like a big basis of how we are humans, that we were like, that we can imagine what could happen or what will. And we just like take that to the next level. And I feel like that VR, at least for me, is it takes that wonder and like solves the problem of like creating it around you.
I think it does kind of relate, though. I mean, it's hard for me to imagine not being a gamer because I have played games since I was like a toddler, practically, like my whole life. But I mean, I pretty much almost always end up buying every game system, and it is because of the content. Like, I don't really care what the specs are on a console, but it's like for Nintendo, they have so many amazing IPs that every time there's a new Nintendo
you have
console,
to get it because you want access.
I'm just like, okay, but now they have Pikmin and they have Animal Crossing, and of course they have Mario Kart, and of course they have the new Zelda, and then it just builds up, and you're like, okay, there's now 15 games I must have, so I have to buy it. And I think that there's a person where like maybe that doesn't solve a problem, but it brings the value. I think that's definitely a thing too.
It
Like
solves
that.
your FOMO.
Yeah.
It's all about solving the FOMO.
Yeah.
It's always about that. Yeah. And I mean, it's different for everyone. Like, I always think of my mom, but my mom's like, she's probably not, she was never really in, she doesn't like sitting down watching movies. She's not a game player, and that's fine. But she loves the fucking medical world. And so, like, that type of stuff is going to draw her in. It just, I think a lot of it for me, and one of the reasons we're doing this podcast is like creating something where people can start to have a vocabulary around it. Because I think, like I was saying with the AR experience of people not understanding that it even is AR, what they're playing with, And I think part of the problem is like there is a lot of stuff that exists out there that people would want that does solve their problem. But we have this kind of like exclusionary feeling of like, oh, that's a technology. I don't know anything about that, and this distance from it.
Kelly and I met not too long ago, and we had actually both independently met this woman named Yolanda Barton, who had started this project. She was working on her PhD, I think, I believe, and she was working on a project to specifically like basically document and give people the experience of preserving the music history of the Central District in Seattle, which is like it's an area in Seattle that historically has been a black neighborhood, and it had during the early or mid 1900s, early to mid 1900s, there was amazing like jazz history there, and it's all disappearing. And so she was very specifically given I think it was actually how do you solve a problem with technology, and it was I'm going to go create an experience that does this very specific thing, preserves this music history, gives people this experience, and those kind of things, like both where it actually solves a real community problem and actually does something that builds those things, that kind of thing. The more we can figure out ways that VR tech can do that, and not just for like industry or business, because that's a huge thing, right? We know that it's going to do that, but figuring out ways that can also benefit society as a whole, communities as a whole, like I feel like that's where like that solving a problem part gives it a real presence in communities. And so if we can figure out a way to the more we can propose things that do that kind of thing, because I think you can have experiences that don't feel, they just feel you're just enjoying them or being in them or learning something pretty straightforward. Yeah. But I think things that also do that kind of problem, where solve a problem and that's more explicit like that from a community perspective or a human perspective.
You sort of like turned it around to be the other way. It's like what I was thinking about was like people have to see that this can solve things for them from like a consumer level. But you're thinking about like people that have problems they want to solve in the world
can use the technology,
and then like here's a new way you can solve it.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I love that.
So I think I think that'll be like that kind of thing will be huge. I'm trying to work with her on that right now. We've been trying to plan it and get more progress on it. But.
Yeah, and she's such a great example. I love that you brought her up because I have a quote that I wrote down when talking to her on the phone, and I can't remember. I'm going to butcher it, but it was basically like this. She totally owned that she has she doesn't know coding. That's not what she does. She wants nothing to do with it, but she has all these ideas and this thing she wants to do, and she's trying to create a team around it and all this. And she had such a great confidence about that, like that she's this, idea person and all this stuff. And she understands and has the experience of like, this technology and other technologies in history, it enables people to do things that don't necessarily need to know the technology like in and out or how to manipulate it or whatever. But she's great at, she knows how to have an idea and put a team around something and learn from them and move forward with solving this problem. Yep. And so she actually has her experiences, it's exactly what we've been talking about. She's someone who I really have a lot of faith and confidence in what she's going to do, for the world and bring the technology to the masses, because she definitely doesn't come from some sort of like gaming, coding, anything background at all. But she's really using it for a very cool
and she's doing that other part of it that in the industry we're not particularly great at. Like she's reaching out to the community, finding the actual connection points, right? Actually going out and showing it to people, talking to them about it outside of the domain, and actually doing those things. And I think those kinds of things where it becomes a really integral part of community and an integral part of people's lives. It's not just about an entertainment thing, or not just about a momentary escape or something like that, where it's like, oh, this is a thing that actually means something really distinct to me and my community.
Right.
Like those can be, I think those can take it from being something that is for a small group that's using it as a kind of fascination point to something that's more widespread.
You're helping whole populations of people versus trying to make something that's just valuable to individuals on some level.
I mean, that's the thing, is that there's so many problems to solve, and we can't, like, people in the industry, or like, you brought up on a different episode, like calling it an industry is kind of weird, because it is just like a platform. Like it spans all the industries. So
that
it's
can
like
be
a tool
used across industries.
Yeah, but yeah, like
populations.
preservation. I mean, so many people have things that they want to solve, and like one of them is probably preservation of something, like the loss of their community, or like the loss of like a music scene or whatever it is. I mean, Seattle is going through this. Has been going through the loss of communities for sure, which is what
culture.
she's.
Huge,
yeah, but like so many people would probably complain about that and want some way of preserving, and maybe literally not even know about like 360 capture or various like capturings that they can do to try and preserve that, at least to like show their kids or show their grandkids, or just like put it in the in the documents, historical documents or whatever.
Yep. That'd be a great thing for overall for us to be able to do. It's just like, oh, we had this really important structure. Let's laser scan it and have it fully available for somebody to see in 50 years. Right. Because we know it's not going to last. So that would be a really neat archiving type. Like we're going to archive our experiences in some ways.
Yeah.
Are there any existing experiences that basically take an area or like a part of a city or maybe a particular building, and it seems really unlikely that we would actually have all of this on file to create an experience, but basically shows it at a number of different phases in its history?
I don't think they've done that yet.
I don't know if phase
Are you
one.
setting me up? I feel
What?
well, would you mean AR or like
AR could be an example of this, where
Why,
you
are
like
you thinking
lay.
of Holotour or
Yeah.
something? Yeah.
I worked on a thing called HoloTour for HoloLens.
Oh,
and
okay.
it's on HoloLens, so it's AR, but it's really more of a VR experience.
Yeah.
But it was meant to be like you go to places and you can like, it'll take like the Pantheon and like cut it away and show you what it looks like inside, or like we take you back in time in the Colosseum so you can see how it looked like. And there's like a gladiator fight that plays out and stuff. And for that, my team, I didn't get to go, but some people on my team got to go to Rome and got to go to Machu Picchu, and they recorded 360 camera footage, and it's all in there, and then we updated it to have like the time travel aspects.
How do you get to the back in time travel? Because they didn't capture it then in 360.
Yeah, so there's some recreation happening.
Yeah.
They did. We made a time.
They said they went,
Actually, we made a time
It's
machine.
totally back in time.
Yeah, it was a very
Corporate
complex
secrets.
project.
It's a little known feature of the
Scope creep
HoloLens.
was out of control.
Yeah, no, they captured like real life footage. So it's kind of cool because you go to like these different places in Rome, and there's just like people walking by, like just like people that just happened to be there that day, walking by like the fountain and stuff. But then when they go back in time, it's like we worked with outside company that made things for film, like just basically specialized in that kind of reconstruction. And then also we had a really talented art team that was really good at like reconstructing.
I mean, there's
buildings.
the thing. We can do that stuff now. If we know what it was,
we can
then
simulate it
rebuild
and-
things.
Right.
So it still won't be quite the same, but
We won't have a perfect replication, but we can make a lot of leaps and assumptions about what those things look like based off history.
And, just to kind of add, because you were asking about it, like I remember one of the things I did for research on that project was people make these walking tour audio files. So there's no visual component, but essentially like you download this 15-minute walking file and audio file, and then you go to the place you're supposed to start, and they'll tell you the directions to walk, and they'll be like, look to your left, look at this building. This building used to be like this thing.
You get cues of where to
engage. And I thought that was a pretty cool idea. There's a few in downtown Seattle, and I'm sure there's others, but like you can imagine that plus an AR experience.
Yeah.
Being like really powerful.
can actually guide you and do all of the
kind of like a museum audio tour, but like outside.
Yeah, like you can walk through the environment.
Pervasive, yeah.
And basically like turn the rewind button on the streets of Seattle back a few hundred years. It's just it's a crazy time because we were talking to Kira the other day about the convention or conference that she was at recently.
VR Days.
Yes, and they focused a lot of the panels were talking about sort of preservation and climate change. That was a central theme. And it got me thinking about the fact that we have these technologies now where we can start to really preserve elements of the environment and freeze them in time. Kind of like, what was it, Notre Dame?
I was talking about Notre Dame.
That burnt down recently.
Yeah, and she was talking about Venice.
Yeah, so like areas like that are changing, whether it's because of climate or it's because of gentrification in a part of a city or some sort of old establishment that's being torn down to be rebuilt as something new. It's like we can basically freeze those things in time and then have a rich experience that years from now we can just kind of turn the clock back on and then go and experience any period in time. So like we should be doing a lot more of that with everything.
I wish I had a 360 capture of the house I grew up in.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It'd be awesome. Should we end on that? Oh, God, you guys.
Oh.
Anything else? I mean, we've talked for so fucking long, but like anything else on your guys' minds?
I feel like on other podcasts, this is the part where we promote the movie we're in or something.
There you
So, Mike, do you have something?
Oh, that's a
that you
good
wanna
point. Yeah, I mean,
talk about?
do you guys have anything going on?
Nothing at all. I don't do anything.
Like, do you have like a
Goodbye.
Mike, do you have like a music event or dance party you're going to soon?
No, I went
Yeah.
dancing last night. It was very fun.
Any promotions?
No.
Shameless plugs?
No, don't really have any. I'm working on a lot of different volunteer projects. Most of them are local stuff that
Yeah.
I'm
Oh, okay.
enjoying, and my work with Oculus is mostly on Horizon, which is it's fits into some of the categories of things we've been talking about. And,
Yeah.
and I'm pretty excited about a lot of those aspects. But no, I think it was awesome. We got a call out for Blue Cone. We got
Let's call it out again. Blue Cone Studios.
Blue Cone Studios. We got a call out for
Tuesday tea.
we got to call it for Yolanda's project stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'm hoping to have
cool.
her on. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk to her about that because I think she'll be in town soon. But yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And other than that, most of them are outside of the VR realm. So I want to
That's
do.
okay.
I actually would really love to do something that's on the environmental side, but I seem to have this limited quantity of time.
That is
Really annoying.
That's so weird.
It's an interesting problem.
So
Some
I really
of us
wanna
have
do
that
some of that,
problem.
but yes.
Yeah. What about you, Miko?
So I currently work at Drifter VR, which is a game studio, and I can't talk about the game we're making, unfortunately, but I hope that you guys like it when it comes out.
Yeah. Well, we
Looking
might be able
forward
to,
to that.
depending on when it comes out, obviously we'll stay in touch because we
Yeah.
might
Of
have
course.
plugged it in the intro or outro by now.
Oh, there
That'd
you
be
go.
Yeah, there you
exciting.
go.
That'll be
I
the
can't wait
benefit.
till it's announced so
Definitely.
I can tell people about it because it's kind of like a mysterious thing. But I stream on Twitch. I do game development streams. So if you want to chat with me on Twitter or on Twitch, it's the same name, which is Dr. Mikachu.
Oh, I love that so
So
much.
good.
Dr. Mikachu. So, and we have a really fun group of people that basically make things. And yeah, I'd love to hear anyone's thoughts about XR or VR.
Yeah.
I think. And I would just say, I really love that Mike wanted to talk about promoting creators and more people in this space. So I guess my final word will be like, don't give up on XR or VR, what if you're hearing like articles are like, oh, is it over? It's like, well, is it? I mean,
Is VR dead?
I mean, it doesn't have to be. Like, there's lots and lots of people doing cool stuff, and you could even be one of those people that does something really awesome. So,
Definitely.
like, it takes time. It's harder to make something than to tear it down. So, lift up other people around you and make great things.
Yep, that's awesome.
I love that.
Wonder
And I
if
want to
that's
plug
so
a couple more things for you, which is You did not mention your cooking on Twitch, which is my
I
favorite.
think she did briefly earlier.
Well, not right now. You did
Not
mention it briefly
officially.
earlier, but you're like, oh, I do game development on Twitch. And I'm like, who even cares about that? No, I'm kidding. The game development is cool. And actually, you do some
The
really...
cooking is notorious.
Yeah.
I'm a bad
Ooh.
cook, and
Well-
so it doesn't happen often. When it does, it's a big thing. Yeah,
Oh, gee.
It's
that's
the
so
best
funny
thing
that
ever.
you brought that up.
Well, okay. So for a quick second on the game development side, you also do like really interesting. Like you'll have like a Twitch scenario where you'll like build stories together, or do kind of like experimental narrative, where like people can submit like their ideas with where the story is going
As
and
you're
things
doing
like
the
that.
Twitch stream?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, so
we
it's like
do.
improvised.
We build an interactive fiction with Twine sometimes, and
Nice.
the story just rolls on and on.
It's
so it's got a
amazing.
bunch
Yeah.
of wild ideas.
Yeah.
Just people come in the chat and they're like, I think that there should be a sea turtle character in this karaoke bar, and now there is one. So
Okay.
Yeah.
you know, that's the kind of thing that it's kind of like an improv writing thing.
Yeah,
but
yeah. You
It's
kind of have to just
amazing.
roll with it.
yeah, yeah.
It feels very much like
Yeah.
DMing in D&D games.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, Twitch is known for gaming streams, but there's a lot of other people, and there's
Yeah.
also VR streamers.
Yep.
Yeah.
When we start talking about VR chat, we're winding down, so we won't get into it. But
Yeah.
VR chat,
It's like a massive streaming world.
Oh,
yeah,
gosh.
VR chat streams are really fascinating. It's like watching somebody else in a nightmare. I mean, it's just like bizarre
it's
content.
kind of chaos and everything is
Yeah.
very strange. You can be anything. You can be like a 500-foot dinosaur and like a 2-foot or like a 2-inch tall.
And then Garfield
little
walks by,
squirrel.
and then like.
What is going on?
Yeah.
So it feels very like Alice in Wonderland. kind of.
I'm friends with a lot of people that do cooking streams, which is why I was kind of encouraged to do my own, even though
Yeah.
I'm not good at cooking. I can't stress
I would
this
have
enough.
never really known that.
And it's actually like it's a much smaller area of Twitch, but
Yeah.
really a cool area. It's very like warm and inviting, and you're just hanging out with someone in their kitchen. And
Yeah.
you know, I guess I'll do some shout outs. Tabatai Cooking is my friend, and he's amazing, and he's the reason why I wanted to stream. He does ramen noodles primarily.
Oh, wow.
But he's also
So hungry.
I know.
I know waffles, ramen
waffles.
noodles.
North Star is
Ramen
around the corner
right
from here.
now.
It's a great diner that
He
has
does all
waffles
sorts of-
and ramen and things like that.
Oh my gosh. He also he just does so many amazing things, but he also is just a huge person for charity on Twitch. Even though he's kind of a small creator compared to like some people you might have heard of in Twitch. He just raised $10,000 for St. Jude's.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
That's
Wow.
amazing.
And so he
Just
is
did like a fundraiser. sort of
yeah,
drive
so
through
he
the
does.
stream.
I mean, I don't know when this is coming out, but he's just huge at promoting charity and
Yeah.
through his cooking streams. So
Yeah.
yeah, and I also like to listen to people play music on streams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, there's just so many smaller types of sub communities that are
Yep.
really fascinating.
I'll do one more plug for you.
Oh my gosh.
I'm sorry,
So
but I
many
just
plugs.
have to. So you did a talk at GDC that was a couple years ago that was called "Been There, Done That," and you were part of a panel.
Yeah.
and you were the first one to speak on it, and it is available. So we will link on it, like in our website or whatever. But it because you can't. It's actually not easy to YouTube search because I tried this earlier. So I don't know why. I'll have to figure that out. Anyways, it's all talking about like how Miko got into the game industry, and it's like a very powerful story. And I actually have quotes from it that I wrote on like a little piece of paper, and that's
my
posted
gosh.
posted
Really?
on my like motivation board by
There
my
you go.
desk. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, and
I'm
it's-
like really flattered. Thank you.
I genuinely mean it. I mean, it was a very powerful message about overcoming challenges to do something that you felt like, you know, that you were hitting a lot of points where you could have very easily been turned away. And a lot of it also is about how you define your own identity and find your own strengths, and how you talk about your own strengths and find ways to talk about that creatively and being honest about what you can do. And I think one of the biggest things from it was like that sometimes you want to be able to say, like when you're figuring out your own identity and what your goals are, that it's about figuring out what you want to say about yourself. And I think a lot of people want to say something about themselves, and they align that as like a weakness because they don't have it. Like it's all how we think of it. It's like that it's a gap and it's a weakness and all of that. And so we get really shy. And the way you just phrase that and talk about it is it's all like that is a strength you want to have. And that's amazing that you even know that because then you can start building your way towards that. And I just think that's a really healthy way to look at it. So
That's
anyways,
awesome.
yeah. So we'll link to that
Thank
talk.
you.
It's great.
I feel like really flattered that you brought that up. Thank you.
That's great.
You never know when what you say is going to have that kind of impact. So that's why
100%. Yeah.
Coming full circle.
Thank you for like doing the whole like sit for 5 hours in a small room.
Thank you for taking
In a
so much
creaky
time.
chair.
pretty comfy.
Don't,
doing,
don't
like,
tell
an
them it was 5
experimental-
hours.
Yeah,
'Cause then they're going to be like, where's the
Where's the
extra
rest of the
footage?
content?
Yeah.
Fair point.
Now we can't cut
Yeah.
anything.
Oh,
Anyways,
no.
all right.
Well, thank you very much.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
an awesome opportunity. Really love getting to do this, and it's just super fun. too, so
Really
I love
appreciate it,
Yeah.
both of
Yeah, thank you for
So
the
much.
invite, and it's really fun, and I'm excited to see where the podcast goes next for sure.
Thanks, guys. Let's get some ramen and waffles.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Wow.
We
Well,
did it.
That was quite the epic conversation
Yeah.
in length and topics. So.
I just want to write love letters to those two guests. They're
They're both amazing humans.
the most amazing human beings ever. But seriously, Miko Mike, thanks so much. You guys are the frickin' best.
We love you both.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So follow Miko for starters. So we did talk about her Twitch recently. Her Twitch stream
Yes.
every Thursday
It's very
at
good.
6 p.m.
If you want to learn about like UX and video game design
Yep.
or cooking.
Or bad cooking.
Bad cooking.
Genuinely, the last time I watched one of her cooking episodes, her
hooking episodes.
wow, she was it's hard.
It's like that's a very different content. On the next hooking episode.
Okay, all right. She was cooking a salad, like literally taking like lettuce and other things in a
Like
regular
cooking a
salad.
salad.
Yeah, like heating one up. Like
Oh,
I don't know. Anyways,
that's concerning.
if that doesn't get you intrigued, I don't know what will. Okay, so anyways, find her on Twitch or Twitter. And Twitter, rather, Dr. Mikachu. That is DrMikachu. And also, we talked about Drifter. That's her current game company, and they're out with their game now that we talked about, which is called Lies Beneath. Jay,
Yes.
do you want to do the voiceover this time, or the description?
I've been waiting for
oh my
this
God,
moment.
I can't wait.
Okay, so Lies Beneath is a single-player survival horror game with a heavy dose of action. Something's gone horribly wrong in the sleepy town of Slumber, Alaska. Now, returning college student May must fight to save her father and her sanity from the terrifying townsfolk and creepy creatures infecting her hometown. Coming out on Quest on March 31st and Rift April 14th.
Good job. You guys can vote for who did a better reading at www.realityquestpodcast.com. Okay.
We'll just post a poll on Instagram. I think that's far more straightforward.
Okay, so that's Miko, and what about Mike Hines?
So, Mike, again, you can follow him or find more and learn more about his amazing work at luminousmachine.com. That is luminous, spelled as luminous, and machine.com.
As we said last time, he talks more about the XR industry on Facebook. He said, if you want to friend him on there, he's a great friend to have. And on his other social accounts, he talks about other things, and he's a great community person who. It's great to follow what types of projects he's working on or what he's volunteering for in the community. Or
He
also
is-
just to see what
Yeah.
dance thing he's going to. He's the most active human being. I genuinely don't know how he does it.
He's like an
He's-
extreme extrovert. Like he
He-
just
yeah.
is constantly
Every
moving,
night of the
busy,
week, it
doing
feels
things,
like
yeah.
he is out dancing and messaging me at midnight, and I'm like, "No, dude, I'm going to bed. Good night." so if you too want to go dance with,
Dance the night away with Mike.
yeah, dance with Mike, you can find him on all of those things. Okay, now us. So.
Go ahead. I think you should take it out this time.
Oh, sure. Okay.
How do you learn more about us?
As I mentioned, you could do RealityQuest podcast.com. That's where you find out more about us, see what platforms we're on. You can email us, just say hi.
Yeah, we love it when
Nobody's
people
emailed
just
us yet.
nobody is just like,
Nobody likes to
hey,
email
y'all,
anymore.
How y'all doing? It'd be
Yeah.
nice to just
We'd
hear
love
from
an
you.
email. Even if it was mean, I'd be like, sweet.
We're actually just really lonely
Yeah.
because of the quarantine.
Yeah. So shoot us a darned email, all right? And you can support us on Ko-Fi or Coffee, whatever you want to call it, or Patreon there. You can follow us on Instagram at RealityQuest Podcast and Twitter at reality_quest. Don't forget to subscribe and rate us.
Please subscribe and rate this.
I can't speak today.
If you should subscribe and make sure to rate us.
Please do. Yeah, we're always looking for, even if it's a bad, I'm like, maybe not if it's a bad rating. But
Yeah, no,
more
actually, we
ratings-
want bad ratings.
No, we do. We want feedback.
Well, we want positive and negative feedback. We want the critique. We want to know, what are we doing well? What are we doing
Yeah.
really terribly? We
Just
want
talk
the good,
to
the
us.
bad, and the
Subscribe and talk to us. Send us an email. God, we're so desperate for friends. Anyways, that feels like most of the info. Oh, there was something
Yeah.
I wanted to add.
Yeah,
so
you had this
in
sort
this
of quote
in this
thing.
second part of the episode, Mike brings up Yolanda Barton, who love her. Hopefully, we'll have her on at some point. She's the one who was working on a project that's preserving certain areas of Seattle through
as they're experiencing
XR.
gentrification. And
Right,
development
and actually
over time.
specifically through exploring the music industry at a certain point in time.
Right.
And we'll link in our show notes. You can find an article on that project, as well as she did a lunch and learn at Oculus where she talks about that. And so I highly suggest you go check those out. But you know what? This is so crazy because I just so happened to be recently cleaning up my desk, and I am one of those people who writes everything on Post-its. I have Post-its everywhere.
A Kanban board
Just like
on your
random
wall.
ideas. It's
Yeah.
not like, clean at all. And I talked with her on the phone at one point months ago. This is a really long time ago, probably before we did this, definitely before we did this episode. And I actually happened to write down what she said. And it was, she goes, just because I can't code doesn't mean I don't have a place. And that was with regards to her working in XR and just being honest about her background. And nevertheless, she was pioneering this idea for XR. And I just love that. I'll repeat it one more time. It says, just because I can't code doesn't mean I don't have a place. And that is something, I know that there's a lot of respect in this industry for people who can code. And I know
For
that
engineers and developers.
yeah. But it's true. Even if it's fine if you're curious, you want to learn and dabble a little bit like I am, and we talked about this a bit in the episode, but it really doesn't mean just because you can't code, it doesn't matter. We still need all kinds of kinds and all kinds of minds.
All kinds of kinds.
Yeah.
All kinds of
That's
kinds
a
of minds.
Miranda Lambert song, All Kinds of Kinds. Love that song. But all kinds of kinds and all kinds of minds. And that she is a perfect example of somebody who has these great, really powerful ideas and has her own experience and her own background. And she's great at driving community around something. She's more of a business mindset and bringing her in to share her ideas and pull a team together around that. It's like those are the people we need. If everybody could code well, then you're missing really key. Like that's just not how
Well,
these
it's-
projects should work. There are certain people who are going to have those skills and certain people who weren't. Like just in like when you're creating movies or something, not everybody knows how to do VFX. Like that just wouldn't make any sense. It wouldn't make any sense. So really appreciate that. And I just wanted to bring that up because that was something happened to find as we were doing this. And I was
Love
like,
it.
wow,
I
that's
love it.
very timely.
Well, thank you for sticking around for the episodes, and thanks for listening to Reality Quest.
Next week, 2 weeks, we'll get you for thoughts on thoughts. Tots on tots.
Yep.
Bye, everyone.
See you then.